Hi, everyone. It's Tessa.
And Joe.
From the Unveiling Paradise podcast.
Tessa, summer is almost here, and so many of our listeners are about to have their epic destination wedding.
And we are so excited for you guys.
Before the big day, guys, we want you to make sure you listen to these 3 episodes.
Episode 62, Deep Diving Your Wedding Ceremony.
Episode 53, Questions Your Wedding Guests Will Ask.
And episode 31, the final countdown to your wedding day.
And if you're planning your wedding here in Hawaii, hit us up and ask us about our Unveiling Paradise podcast promo.
Happy planning.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to season 2 of the Unveiling Paradise podcast. Tessa, did you miss me?
I saw you almost every day. I did not miss you. But I missed the podcast.
All right. We haven't been recording. We've been planning, plotting, scheming. Today, we're going to talk about something that I think is really relevant for this time of year. And that is, you're engaged. Now, what do you do, right?
Right. I'm so excited. This is very important.
And if you're new to our podcast, this is actually probably the right place to start, because if you just got engaged, there's so many questions. Where do you go? What do you do? Like, where do you start, right? And I think this is probably one of the most useful episodes if you're just getting started in the wedding planning process.
So normally, right, you get engaged, you celebrate, maybe you tell people or you don't tell people, it's up to you, and then you start your planning.
So where do you start? Like, where do you start? And I think what's funny for me is, like, as someone who went through the process of proposing and being engaged, I think for most guys are very, like, simple creatures. And like, we just think of like that's the next step of your relationship. So you're dating someone, you're exclusive, and then the next step is to be engaged to someone.
And when you propose, you're kind of like, high fives, that's it. We're done.
We did it. Yay.
But really, that kind of starts a whole nother process, right? The whole engagement is a beast in itself before the actual wedding.
Right. And I think, like, this is speaking for me, when I proposed to my wife, I was like, I didn't even think about the actual wedding planning. And then all of a sudden it was fast track into planning a wedding. All right. And I think for guys like me, right, this is a good place to start. It's our crash course on where do you go next after you've got the big, yes, I will, I do, whatever.
Right. But have you seen, and there are a lot of brides, my sister being one of them, where she knew she was going to get proposed to. She knew there was a ring coming. By the time my brother-in-law actually proposed to my sister, she had planned the entire wedding.
Right.
So it kind of was a little backwards. And I have brides like that. I have a bride right now who only, I think, a month ago just got engaged. But we've been planning for about 6 months. We booked a venue. She obviously booked coordination. We booked a caterer.
So she already had hired you before she got the ring.
Yes, and when she hired me, I'm like, are you sure you want to do this? She's like, oh yeah, we're getting engaged. It's happening. Let's start planning now so I'm not rushed.
So there's this huge spectrum, right? Yeah. So, the guys that are like me that are like, okay, we're going to be engaged for 7 years. Or whatever.
No, my God, don't do that.
And then on the other hand, are couples that have already started really planning before they even have got that ring on that finger.
And I think there's different reasons. My bride who is engaged finally now, she wanted a summer wedding. Okay. And so I think for her, she was like, I have to start now. If he's not going to propose until winter, I don't only want 6 months to plan. I need some time. So I think she intentionally was being strategic with the planning.
All right. Well, we have a lot to get into, so let's get started.
Welcome to Unveiling Paradise, your go-to destination wedding podcast. I'm Tessa, wedding planner and owner of Fred and Kate Events.
And I'm Joe, wedding and adventure photographer of Joseph Esser Photography. We are based in Hawaii, one of the biggest, most popular locations for destination weddings.
We want to share our real-life experiences with you, give you insight from a professional's perspective, and still make sure you're having fun in the process.
We're huge believers in the fact that planning a destination wedding can be one of the most amazing experiences, and we want to bring you along.
We're so excited to talk with you about weddings, Hawaii, and everything else under the sun.
So pack your bags and let's get started.
So you're engaged. Now what?
Oh, right. Okay, let's get into this.
So today we are going to talk about the 5 things that we think you should do and the one thing that you definitely should not do.
Do not do this thing that we're going to wait till the very end of the episode to share.
Do not do it. We are going to keep you on the edge of your seat wait until the end to find out what we think.
Ooh, okay. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, but before we get started, I have a question for you, Joe.
All right. What do you got?
Did you know that there is actually an engagement season?
You know what? I actually do know this because I'm in the wedding industry.
You do know. Okay. Tell me about it.
So there's this thing called the engagement season. It's sort of like, I guess if you live in the Midwest, it's like the hunting season, right? There's a time to like...
Are you hunting for your significant other?
I don't know, but
was weird.
But it's interesting because between Thanksgiving and Valentine's Day,
right,
most people will propose to their significant other. Isn't that interesting? Like that's the most, I guess, romantic time to propose.
I mean, I guess if you think about it, it makes sense, right? It's the holidays. You have just kind of all the good feelings.
You have your family and your friends are there. And
family
everything.
And friends are there.
Yeah.
You have, Christmas is a big one. Christmas is the most popular day to get engaged. I bet you if you walked into any room and you asked, what day did you get engaged? I would say at least one person is going to say Christmas.
Christmas or New Year, starting the new year. What a great way to pop the question, right?
Or Valentine's Day.
Or Valentine's Day. I guess like for me, as like the bro in the room, right? I think a lot of guys propose on these dates because it's sort of like a little bit of cheating. You don't have to think so hard about like, right, getting that Christmas present.
Oh my God. No.
Or that Valentine's Day present.
You still need another present.
Do you?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of guys are like, okay, what am I going to get for Christmas? Anyway, but it's true. Like
that stinks.
Okay, so I don't think that's the case for everybody, but I do think that it is a fact. Like between Thanksgiving and Valentine's Day, that tends to be when most people actually get engaged. I think what's really fun too now with the engagement season is it's not just the dudes that are proposing anymore, right?
Right.
I think that was tradition was, the guy would ask the girl or whatever, but that's not necessarily the case anymore. And so girls, ladies, if you're looking for that Christmas present or that Valentine's present, bundle it up. Those holidays are coming. You don't have to worry about
right.
those gifts.
What's cool is I saw a story about a girl who just proposed to her man. But she got trolled.
Yeah,
people were
like,
"Oh my God, that's so lame! What are you doing?" She was fine. He loved it.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, okay, first off, if you guys have seen this story, this girl is gorgeous.
She's gorgeous.
Like, who wouldn't want to be proposed to by this woman, right? And so I thought it was funny, but there is that kind of double standard of can the guy propose, can the girl propose? Well, think about your client that's pre-planning this wedding before she's got the ring on her finger. She's kind of proposing already to her. She's like putting the deadline, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
Minus actually having the ring.
Yeah, I guess so. But I felt like this story about people trolling her, like, not cool, guys.
Right. And I think that's the thing that, again, we've talked a lot about this in our previous season is that, there are traditions, right? There's traditions on who gets to ask and do you ask the parents' permission and all these other things, right? And I think that the thing that I love the most right now is that we get to reinvent a lot of these traditions.
Right.
And so some of these kind of like, I don't know, what do you want to say, sexist sort of traditions.
Just outdated.
Yeah, right? Really they are. So anyway, we'll get into that. But I love seeing those stories. I love seeing our couples break traditions. And
same.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
So do I. I love that.
Okay, so Tessa, let's actually get into our tips, right? We have 5 tips of what to do first and then our spoiler teaser, right? What not to do.
Don't give it away.
Okay, so what do we have for our first? Where should we start? Okay, you've got the ring on your finger. What do you need to do next?
This is my personal opinion, and I feel like before you start jumping into the planning, getting crazy, you have to tell your family and friends.
Yeah, right.
But really, what I mean by that is tell your inner circle, immediate family, your best friends, before you post on social media for the world, because you have that random friend that first to comment every single time. Like, you don't want this person knowing before your parents.
You want your family and your closest friends to be the first to know. Right. Instead, I totally get that. Okay, so telling the parents, telling the family, right?
Right.
So that we just talked about tradition. Is it still the norm that like you're supposed to ask for the parents' permission before you actually propose, or is there something that we should talk about in terms of how do you address the parents? Like, do you ask for their blessing after the fact? Do you ask for their permission after the fact? Is this sort of a weird tradition that we just continue to like hold on to, or?
Well, I don't think it's a weird tradition, but I think with a lot of these very old traditions, right? Like the father handing the bride off at the ceremony, right? It's just some people hold on to it, some don't. I personally think that it is okay to let those traditions go. My husband didn't ask my parents for permission, but we were dating for almost 10 years before we got married.
Right. Well, and okay, so, but, you know, when we talk about weddings are full of traditions, chock full of traditions.
Right.
A white wedding gown, right?
Right.
And so I think that is part of, you know, like that's part of the experience, right?
Did you ask?
Oh, so if you know my wife and you know my wife's family, you know that, like, there's no asking. She probably would be offended if I asked her parents.
Right.
You know, she's this strong, very powerful woman. And I think that would have gone really weird for her to ask her dad's permission, you know, in advance, or mom's permission or whatever.
Right.
So right after I proposed, we did go and talk with her parents. We called my parents. And I think it wasn't necessarily about like asking permission, but it was more about like having their blessing for us to get married, because actually we asked them for money too to pay for the wedding.
So you really need to get them on board.
You got to get them on board. You got to get them on board. And I think that, you know, it's always different for every couple, right? Some couples, their parents are divorced. So, you know, it might be weird to just ask dad, you know, when it should be, you should be talking to mom too, or, you know, asking their blessing. So I think that's something for every couple. It's going to be different. And you have to figure out what works for you too.
So once you tell your family and friends, I think that is a great time for you and your fiancé to kind of take a step back and figure out, do you want some time for yourselves to just kind of relish in this before you share the news with everybody else?
Some romantic time. Is that what you're talking about, or what are you talking about?
Well, creepy, yes. But yeah, so you can have some romantic time. Part of it too for me is just, it can be very overwhelming to post on social media and have everybody know your business.
Right.
Right? And so I think it's okay to take that time to just enjoy the engagement, just be with just the two of you and your family and friends without everybody knowing, congratulating you, asking you all the details.
All your friends saying, am I going to be a groomsman or a bridesmaid? Who are you going to choose? Who are you going to choose?
Yeah. So I just, I had a call the other day with one of my brides who, she went home for Thanksgiving. She got engaged a little before that. And we were just talking about this sense of overwhelm that she had at Thanksgiving, where all of her family, with the most genuine love and support possible, we're bombarding her with all of these questions. Where are you going to do it? What's it going to look like? What's your decor? What can we help with? And she's like, I don't have these answers. I know nothing. I think for her, she felt like, I wish I waited to tell everyone until after Thanksgiving, when she had that time to herself just to kind of enjoy. It's almost that little secret between her and her fiancé versus getting not attacked, but overwhelmed with all her family. Again, purest love. They just wanted to support her, but it was too early in her planning to answer or have any answers to those questions. Right.
And I totally appreciate that. I think that's so important, because I think a lot of times, like for me, I mean, I just shared this, like you go from being, I'm in that next level, next stage of my relationship, to holy crap, I have to plan this thing. Like, do I really want to go through with this? But I think that's what kind of happens is, it's like you go straight to planning when, like you as a couple maybe hadn't even had that time to talk about that yourselves.
And process.
Yeah. What do we want to do? Do we want to have a big wedding? Do we want to have a small wedding? Who do we want to invite? And we'll get into this in a second here, but I think that it becomes overwhelming right off the bat, and so especially when you bring in, I don't know, like we all have family members that are, more extra than others.
Helpful. The word is helpful.
But,
eager.
Eager, right. But I actually love that idea. I think, having that time just as a couple to figure out, okay, let's talk about this. Like, what do we want to do? What do we think is right for us before you have to start responding to, your family who are eager to jump in and start planning with you.
Right. And it's just relishing in that time, looking at your ring, taking some selfies, just spending time together is such a great first place to start.
Well, let's talk about looking at that beautiful ring, right? Our next tip is about the ring, right? About your bling, right? It's about like, we got to take care of that first before anything else. What do you do with this expensive investment that you're going to be walking around the streets with.
So this is kind of the not fun, boring, blah part of wedding planning, but it's so important. You have to get your ring insured.
Right.
Someone spent a lot of money on this ring, whether it be you bought it for yourself, your fiancé got it for you. The ring needs to be insured. This is probably one of the most expensive items that you have in your house on you at this moment.
Ever.
And
a lot of times the engagement ring doesn't actually fit very well because it's I think a lot of times it's a guess on what size that ring is. And so sometimes it's way too big, right? Easy to fall off.
Which can be really scary. Can you imagine losing your ring?
Right. So the next couple tips is first, get that puppy resized to make sure that it's a snug fit on your finger, right?
For sure.
And then you can get your ring insured, right? So there's a ton of companies, jewelers, that actually insure your engagement rings. And so if, it falls off or the stone is loose or it's whatever, then you can have that peace of mind that it's insured. So this is, I think, that before you start planning anything, get that engagement ring insured.
Just check it off your list.
Yeah, check it off your list.
Be done. Obviously, once you get engaged, you're going to want to take selfies.
Right.
Right? You're going to take pictures with your ring. You got it insured. You're feeling good. My tip for you is get your nails done.
Okay, yeah, for sure. 'Cause this is probably the only time in your life that anybody's going to be really taking pictures of your hands.
Of your hand. And they're going to be looking at your nails. As a photographer, I'm sure it's kind of a big deal when your nails are like jacked and like the paint's ripping off and whatever.
Right. Nobody wants weird hands.
Can you Photoshop it though and look good?
I can, but I don't like to.
Oh, but I have a really funny story. So I saw this thing on Twitter. This girl got engaged, and I guess, I don't know, her hands weren't looking as good as she wanted. So her friend stood in, put the ring on, and like posed in the picture. So it's like her friend's hand with her and her fiance kissing.
Does she have really nice nails or what?
Yeah, so her friend had really nice nails. Her friend's nails were done. Hers were not. So that's why her friend has the ring on. She's posing. So they have a shot with them, like just the photo that they posted. And then kind of the zoomed up picture with her friend, like kind of ducking down with her hand up. It's so funny.
That's perfect. And it's great that the ring actually fit her friend's hand too, right?
I know, it's perfect. I think they're like the same size.
Well, let me give you an opposite horror story.
Oh.
I had a couple. We do a lot of underwater photos. I don't know if you guys know this, but we do a lot of underwater photos in the ocean here. And we had a couple, they had just gotten engaged. We get in the water. 5 minutes later, we looked down and like her ring was gone.
Oh my God.
Her engagement ring with her diamond and everything.
Like it was a real engagement ring?
It was a real engagement ring. And so somewhere at the bottom in the ocean, I guess you got to find your metal detector to find this thing. But we were looking all around the area that we were, swimming and stuff, and it was completely gone.
So what happened?
So thankfully they had insurance. I think they contacted their jeweler, and I think it was fine. I mean, that you have to expect that there's a good chance your wedding ring or your engagement ring can get lost, right? Or,
stolen or whatever.
It happens, right? It happens. And so if you don't have that insured, right, it'd be a nightmare. So let's actually talk about where to start. Okay. So after you've had that time together and you've got your ring insured,
right,
and you're ready to actually take those steps to start planning, let's talk about that. This is really the meat and potatoes of our show today. All right, Tessa, in my opinion, I think there are 3 different things that you need to start planning. Okay, let me just go through where I think we should start. First, your location. What location are you thinking? What location are you considering? Is it a local location in your hometown? Are you thinking about a destination wedding?
So you're thinking like where in the world?
Where in the world, right?
Got you.
The second, your budget. You have to have an idea of how much money you want to spend on your wedding.
Right.
What can you afford? And also some of these hard conversations about, is anyone going to help contribute money to your wedding? Right. And then finally, the guest count, right? So I think your guest count really dictates a lot about how much you're going to spend and even the location that you're going to be having your wedding at. You have to feed all these people, right? All these freeloaders are going to come to your wedding and eat your food. I think that is a really important place, like, to start. How many people do you think are going to be at the wedding? And of course, that kind of dictates the cost. And so, I know we talk about this a lot, but like a lot of times, destination weddings, if you have a destination wedding, that means you're not going to have a huge guest count. If you have a local wedding, you may have to invite all of your coworkers.
Right.
Do you want a wedding of 100 people, 500 people, 20 people. And I think that's a kind of a conversation. And for me, when I think about that initial planning, that does sort of set the tone for what your wedding day is going to be like.
Right.
Right. And then actually, I have a fourth. Can I say this too? I know this is not.
That's not in our notes. What are you adding?
But I think that if I can say anything to the guys who are listening, guys, be involved in the process, because I see this a lot where, you've proposed and you've got the ring and you've got the yes, and then the guys just peace out and they just say, whatever you want, honey.
So we've recently just had some amazing couples, right? Kevin and Kristen.
Right.
Shout out to their wedding.
Yeah.
That was during our break. We had a wedding for the two of them, and Kevin was so involved.
Right.
He was involved from the very beginning, from the decor, the music. Do you remember he did a Wolf of Wall Street speech?
Right.
And he practiced it over and over to nail his speech. I mean, he killed it.
Right. And I think that's what we're talking about. Like, it's not just the bride's big day, right? It's the couple. And like,
right.
I think if we're talking about a specific couple here, right? Kevin and Kristen.
Right.
If he wasn't involved in this process, it really wouldn't have been as much fun. It would have
been fun, but a very different vibe.
Right. And the fact that we got to know the couple, and the fact that the family got to celebrate with the couple. And I think the more we see our couples planning a wedding together, for me personally, instead of it just one person planning the whole thing, it's just that much more exciting. Okay. So let's talk about this location. Right. So what is the location of your dreams for your wedding? Is it, let's break this down. Like, what are we talking about?
When we're talking about location, we're really kind of going big picture. Are you looking, where in the world do you want to get married? Do you want to get married locally? So it's close to home, somewhere that you can drive, somewhere that is easy to get to for friends and family. Or are you planning a destination wedding?
I think there's pros and cons for both. I think when you think about having a local wedding, that a lot of your family are going to be able to attend. So especially like our older relatives, grandparents, whoever that might be. And that's something to think about. They're probably not going to attend a destination wedding in the Caribbean or something like that.
This decision is personal to every couple. So I think it's important to just have that conversation and figure out local or destination. There's no right or wrong answer, but you definitely need to have that conversation before you move forward with your planning.
Totally. And for me, with a destination wedding, like being the dude in the house, the bro in the house, like if you're going to propose on Christmas to skirt having to get a Christmas gift for your partner, the same thing happens for your wedding, for a location. Like, choose a location that you could imagine having your honeymoon at, right?
Oh my God.
Bundle that up. or whatever, or your vacation, right? If you're like thinking about, we want to go on vacation anyway, like find a location that, you would want to go to anyway, right? Is that horrible to say?
Yes. And pro tip, do not use your wedding ring as a Christmas present.
A lot of our listeners have done that. So, okay, we love you guys, whatever.
Okay, so I want to bring it back kind of to our second point, and that's budget. We figured out where you want to do it, whether it's local or destination. You've got a location. Next up to me is budget, and you have to have a general idea of how much you want to spend. It's hard to jump in without having any clue how much money you want to put towards this wedding.
Right, Tessa. There are so much that goes into a wedding. All the costs, DJ and floral and all this stuff. We actually recorded episode 9 last season, which talks about kind of a high level what goes into a wedding and just thinking about general budget things like how much you should expect to pay for a wedding.
I think budget is important to talk about before you actually start your planning.
I actually hate talking about budget, but
you have to.
You have to, right?
We have to be adults. If
right.
you're getting married,
right.
It's time to be an adult and talk about money.
Right. And that ties into our final point, your guest count. How many people do you actually want to have at your wedding? And I think that, again, this sets the tone for the party you're going to have. If it's an intimate dinner with 20 people, right, that's going to be a different wedding than a big party with 300 or 400 people, and you think
completely different,
and you think about like what is that wedding experience that you want to have? And of course it ties into these other things too of the location and your budget. All right. And I think if you were to put this in a blender and hit that pulse button, like this is where we start. This is where we start. And I think this is the foundation that you can start planning your wedding from.
Exactly. I think you make a good point. They all are so intertwined. Location, budget, guest count. Like you can start really with any of them and they all just kind of keep tapping each other.
So can we call this our wedding smoothie?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. This is our wedding smoothie.
It's our recipe for
Layer
success.
1.
It's chocolate, because chocolate's the best.
And peanut butter.
Hey, all right. Okay, so what else do we have, Tessa?
So after our wedding smoothie, these are maybe the sprinklings on top of our smoothie. It's the venue and the date.
Okay, so you're making your smoothie, throw in those blueberries or chocolate or whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah. These are like kind of the chocolate chips and coconut shavings on top.
I don't know how this analogy just got started.
But now I want a smoothie so badly.
Okay, so what are the next steps?
Right. So basically venue, right? So once you pick your location, where in the world you're having your wedding, say you want to do a local wedding. Now it's finding your venue.
So it's kind of fine-tuning.
Fine-tuning, right? Honing in what venue do you want to get married at in your hometown?
And what are the venue options in that location, at your hometown or that destination?
For example, in Hawaii, we have obviously indoor and outdoor venues. They're very different. They're going to set the vibe very differently, right? So what is that vibe that you want for your wedding? Do you want an outdoor wedding? Do you want an indoor? Do you want a ballroom that can hold 500? Or do you want a private outdoor house that can fit 20?
Or, again, like in Hawaii here, we have oceanside venues and we have venues that are up in the mountainside. Really, the venue is really starting to fine tune, the overall theme and vibe of your wedding, right? So when you start thinking about venue, you're starting to also think about like what that experience is going to be like for yourself and for your guests.
You're totally right. The venue is going to help set the vibe. It's going to set the guest experience. All of that's kind of lining things up. So if you fall in love with a venue, the next step is making sure that they have your date.
Right. There are some very popular locations here in Hawaii that book a year and a half, 2 years out. You might love the venue, but
Right, but the venue dates might not love you.
Right. And that's a challenge, right? So the venue and the date kind of go hand in hand. And I guess for me, the more flexible you are with your wedding date.
When you're looking at a venue and you love it, the more flexible you are, the better chance you have of getting this venue that you really love.
Right.
Weekends are always really popular, right? In addition to that, there are other dates, popular dates, special numbers that mean a lot that also get booked up really quickly.
Being flexible, right? Not having just one date picked out, having a range of dates, maybe even like a range of months.
Yes.
I think that's helpful. I do know as a vendor, right, that our weekends book up way earlier than our weekdays because people generally plan their weddings on the weekend.
Saturday nights, always.
Right. Nobody's in school, and you can stay out and you don't have to worry about getting your kid to school on the morning.
Right, exactly.
Right. Tessa, do you ever have couples that are they fall in love with one date and then it's like you're trying to figure out how to make it work?
Yes, for sure. We have some couples that are, they want to get married on a very specific date because that's the date they got engaged. That's their dating anniversary. And there's some couples that just want to have those very special fun dates.
Right. What do they call them? Ambigrams or something like that? Where it's
Is that what it's called?
I think so. So it's like so we had one in 2021. Let me think. It was 12/02/2021. And like literally every way you flip it, like you reverse it.
Oh, so it's the same forward and back.
Forward and back.
Yeah.
Upside down. Right. If you actually flip it.
I'm looking upside down.
Top to bottom. And that was such a cool wedding date to have.
That is cool.
But guess what?
What?
Everybody and their mother wanted to have this wedding date.
Right.
And so it was really hard for couples to find vendors because everybody was booked on that super popular wedding day. And I think that's something that, I guess if it was me as a sort of a pro tip, don't choose those dates because you're going to be competing with everybody else for that cool wedding date.
But don't you think it's really easy for you to remember your wedding?
Yeah, for guys love it.
And girls too. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes I forget. So the fun thing too is, did you realize in Asian cultures, numbers have significance, which means that there are certain dates that are very lucky and dates that are unlucky.
Right. Numerology. You don't want to choose.
You don't want to choose an unlucky day.
Right. Your wedding would be cursed.
And so a lot of times what will happen, and I've had this happen probably a handful of times.
Yeah.
A couple will pick their wedding date. They've booked their venue, like paid money, put down a deposit. They'll take it back and tell their families. And grandma, like old
Right.
Chinese grandma, is like, absolutely not. You cannot do it on this date.
Right. That's happened to me too.
Yeah.
I see that. I've seen that. Yeah.
And they've had to change their date.
Yep.
So it really is important. If you know numerology is important in your culture, double check with your family.
Yep.
This is the date we're planning to do.
I think there's some apps or there's a website where you can, double check your wedding date too. And absolutely talk to your grandma who's going to, be paying attention to this too. All right. So our next step doesn't necessarily have to be after you've chosen your venue and your date. You can actually do this before. And that is to start looking at wedding coordinators or wedding planners. So a lot of our couples will actually start with working with a wedding planner because a wedding planner can guide you to venues that you may not be familiar with, or, give you just sort of that foundation to get started with your wedding.
And obviously I'm biased being a wedding planner myself, but I think that having a wedding planner from the start just takes off so much stress of the planning. If you're doing a local wedding, obviously you have a lot of other things in play. Your family's involved. You have a lot of your friends there. With a destination wedding, it's just that unknown, right? So having a wedding planner, whether you're doing local or destination, I think is a huge benefit to help your peace of mind, help kind of mediate between you and your fiancé sometimes when you're not always on the same page. Like, we jump in and we do a lot to help create your vision.
It kind of sounds like you're plugging yourself. Right?
I'm not.
Wait, hold on. Wedding planners are resources, right? You have in your brain, you have like so much knowledge that most people don't have. And it's a knowledge that you can't necessarily access from the internet.
For sure. And I think that's what our job is, right? It's just whenever we jump into the wedding planning process, we're there to kind of pick up and put you on the right path as best as we can. If you start the process with a wedding planner, I think we get you on the right track from the start. So the wedding planning is just a lot less stressful. We help save money. It makes more sense along the way.
Right. And that's the thing is, like, I know that a lot of wedding planners will guide their couples to making some of the right decisions and the right fits for their wedding. Especially when it comes to budget, you're going to know the wedding coordinator, wedding planner is going to know what fits in your budget. So you're not like just sort of spinning wheels and saying, I love this photographer, but like they're way too expensive, or I love this venue. And you're like, well, actually, that's great in the summertime, but it's a rainy mess in the wintertime,
Right.
Whatever it might be.
Right, for sure. Let me give you an example of a recent client that I had. So she chose to do a lot of the planning herself, and we kind of picked up about 2-3 months up. At that time, she was super stressed. When I jumped in, we were able to really kind of turn things around. She was over budget on her florals. So I kind of went through her floral budget, met with the florist. We actually switched to a different florist who was able to get everything she wanted in her vision, adjusted everything. So we reused a lot of her flowers. We redid her floor plan to maximize seating without needing extra linens or tables. We added lighting. So basically we kind of turned everything around and shifted it to the exact vision. I would say even better than what she anticipated. Had she worked with a planner with these resources from the very beginning, I don't think she would have had any stress along the way.
And you were telling me about this client, like it seemed like she was ready to just quit planning her wedding entirely because she was so stressed out.
She was so frustrated.
Right.
So I'm so glad that we were able to pull it together at the end for her. But it could have been just a more pleasant experience along the whole way if we worked together from the start.
So start with the planner. Shameless plug for Tessa.
Yes. Any planner.
Okay, so let's get into the last point. Tell us the thing that we should absolutely not do. You've been waiting for this moment. Like, what is do not do it at all costs? What are we talking about? It better be good.
It is good. So this is important. And this is why I feel like I say this over and over and over to anyone that will listen to me. The one tip that I share with every single newly engaged couple is this. Don't get caught up in the planning process and immediately start booking vendors. You need to take a step back and you need to have that conversation about your budget, your date, your plan. You need to have a plan before you just start spending money.
So you're saying, so if you just got engaged, don't hire a photographer.
Don't hire a photographer
Right.
immediately. Just take a step back.
Don't hire your florist.
Don't hire your florist. Don't even hire your wedding planner at that point. Like, take a step back and just figure out what you want first.
Yeah. You always tell me you hate these online guides on like, these little checklists on when you're supposed to, hire this person and that person and this person and that person.
Because it's so generic. It's not custom to your wedding. For example, they'll tell you maybe book your photographer 1 year out. But say you get engaged 9 months out. Now you're panicking like, oh my gosh, I haven't hired my photographer yet. And you book someone without any thought just because of a panic of this online rando website is telling me I have to book someone. You've done no research. You haven't found someone that you truly love. You know, if you're working with a planner, it's our job to kind of push when you need to and give you the freedom to take the time to find vendors that you really, really love.
So if you book the very first photographer that you contact because they responded to your email the fastest,
right,
might be the most expensive photographer. It might be the worst photographer. It might be, you know, and just because you're feeling pressured, that's not a good reason to book them. You want to fall in love with them. You also want to fall in love with their cost as it fits with your budget.
Exactly. Okay, so let's recap. You're engaged. Now what? First thing to keep in mind is you want to tell your closest friends and family. Don't post on social media until you tell your friends and family.
Second, get that engagement ring insured.
For sure. Next, when you're ready to start planning, then you look at the top 3: location, budget, guest count.
And my bonus, make sure that all our grooms are involved in the process. Make this process something for you guys as a couple.
Right.
Don't just put it on your partner.
Exactly. The next step is finding your venue and date. And I think those kind of go hand in hand, right? Venue and date.
And we talked about hiring a wedding planner and how that might actually be a logical first step for you.
Right. And the last thing that we talked about was the one thing that you don't want to do, and that's jump in, start spending money frantically without any rhyme or reason.
Right.
Make a plan first.
Make a Venn diagram.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Get out your charts.
Get your charts up. Map it out.
Do the homework.
All right. And listen to us. We think that if you start here, this is going to make the whole process be a fun and stress-free experience.
And that's the goal, right? We want to be stress-free and you want to enjoy your planning process.
Right. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening today. Our very first episode of season 2. Woo,
Yay, we did. I'm so happy.
And I'm even more happy about our next episode.
Me too.
We're going to have our very first guest to our podcast, and this is going to be so awesome and such helpful information. So can't wait to share that. So make sure if you haven't followed our show, follow us so you can get updated when our next show drops.
We're stoked. I'm so excited for next week.
All right, guys.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Unveiling Paradise.
If you enjoy our show, please follow us and rate us on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. It would really mean a lot.
And don't forget to also get on our mailing list and follow us on Instagram. Just do it already.
Until next time, this is Tessa.
And this is Joe.
And don't forget, your happily ever after
is just a plane ride away.